Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have a brand new set of great stories for you to enjoy. Subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Sit comfortably. Here we go. LOL. They closed 3 hours ago. Back in my retail days, I was working at a certain large blue and yellow electronics store selling phones. My department had an unofficial rule: don't start any new cell phone transactions a half hour before closing. This was for two reasons. One, the support we had for the phone carriers was East Coast time and generally closed an hour before the store closed. Two, I don't know if anybody here has bought a cell phone on a contract, but that can take forever if something goes wrong. My general manager openly hated this rule. He got his bonus off of customer surveys, and anytime a customer left even mildly dissatisfied, he'd have a very mild heart attack. So obviously, last-minute customers being told, sorry, we can't do that, are generally pretty grumpy. After a year of working there, I ended up as the most senior person in the department and certainly the one with the most knowledge about its inner functions. I was also almost always the closer. On to the malicious compliance. My general manager was badgering me every night for months about helping customers after our usual half-hour cutoff. Normally, I'd just deny him and explain that if he wanted them to be taken care of right then, he could do it himself. He'd back off, he has no idea how to sell a phone, and when he's tried, he screws up. This particular night, I saw a large family walking in, beelining toward my department at 8:45. We closed at 9. I was in a capricious mood and decided this would be the night that my general manager would stop bugging me. The family rolls up, I give them the spiel. Sorry, we can't do activations after 8:30, blah, blah, blah. They look sad and start to head back out, and right on cue, my general manager walks up to them, chats for a bit, and starts heading to me for my nightly, oh, come on, can't you help them? I know it's late. Me. You know what, general manager? I'll take care of them. You're closing up the doors, right? It might run a little late. General manager. Yep, I'm closing the store tonight. Perfect. I chatted with this particular family the other day. They didn't speak English that well. They were porting in from like 3 different prepaid carriers, and the company they were trying to open an account for is known for being the worst. So I start the transaction. By 9:30 p.m., there's major problems. 2 of the ports aren't going through because I was given the wrong info for the port. Everything's going to crap. I look at my manager. I smile. He smiles back. He doesn't know how bad everything's going. Around 10 p.m., he's checking his watch. He's getting antsy. It's just me, him, and the customers in the store. At 10:30, he asks me how much longer I'm going to be. I answer, I don't know, and explain everything that's going wrong. He asks if I can call the company's account support. LOL. They closed 3 hours ago. 11 p.m. rolls around, he's just sitting at a counter across the store, alternating between screwing around on his phone and staring at me. 11:30 rolls by. He looks visibly upset. Keep in mind, this is a man with the same personality as Drywall. Seeing any emotion on his face is rare. We hit midnight. I've somehow fixed one of the port errors. Most everything else is still screwed beyond my abilities without calling the carrier. General manager. Hey, Bailey the nerd, is this going to be much longer? Maybe we should call it a night. Me. Yeah, to be entirely honest, there's nothing I could have done for them as soon as things started going wrong. I've spent the last 2 hours fixing problems I have no business even attempting to fix, and somehow I've made some minute progress. However, I know customer satisfaction's important to you, and I'm willing to stay the 5 more hours I'd need to get this even kind of working for them. General manager. Okay, tell them to come back tomorrow and we'll finish up. Me. By the way, we haven't been able to finalize the purchase for the phones, so they can't take the new ones, and the ports that did work mean that their old phones don't work. So you're going to have to tell them that their phones aren't going to work tonight. General manager stares blankly. Me. Sure wish there was some way we could have avoided starting a process like this with no possibility for support from the carrier. They could have made quick work of this. And our next story. Project gets canceled while I'm interviewing, and I'm supposed to pay for the trip? I don't think so. During the dot-com boom in the late 90s, I became somewhat well known for my expertise with a now somewhat obsolete networking technology. I ended up getting heavily recruited by a big telecom firm in Denver to run the technical side of a huge networking project they had underway. After multiple phone interviews, I was invited out for the big in-person sit-down, a 2-day affair where I met with the big dogs, other techies, HR, etc. It was a pretty killer opportunity. Took the trip. First day of meetings went great. Felt like it was a great match, etc. I did sense that there was some tension between the two groups over network architecture. Turned out that was one of the reasons they were bringing in someone more senior who could finalize the approach and get the project moving. That was fine, all part of the job, whatever. Got wined and dined after the first day and was feeling like the job was a match and that I'd be moving to Denver. Went in the second day, and after another round of interviews, the division head takes me to lunch. That's when it all blew up. While we were at lunch, the firm's senior management canned the entire project and fired every person associated with it. Apparently, there was a huge internal political war going on. This project was ground zero for the big battle, and this division just lost. We get back from lunch, and the manager escorts me to HR, where we're going to sit down and go over their offer. Instead, he's told what's going on and that he's out of a job along with everyone else on the project. At this point, I was told to leave. No apologies. It was just crappy luck for me. WTF. Okay then, I'm gone. I get back to the hotel and there's a voicemail for me asking me to call the HR people. I'm PO'd, but I call. They tell me that they've had to cancel my return ticket and that I'd need to pay for the hotel myself now, but that if I would submit an expense report, they might be able to get me a check. There's a second voicemail from the front desk asking me to provide a credit card for the stay, and then I get a call on my cell phone from the car rental company, which I didn't answer. Turns out they also wanted my credit card. F that. I called the airline and they said my reservation had indeed been canceled, but they also acknowledged that the reservation was paid for using a fully refundable ticket, which I was holding, and which back in the 90s was essentially as good as cash. Said they wouldn't know for certain if I could board until I showed up at the counter with the physical ticket. Great. Just effing great. I'm on the hook for several thousand in airfare, nice hotel and rental car after taking several days of vacation from my job for this interview? I don't think so. Here's the revenge. I packed my bags and loaded up the rental car, left the keys in hotel room door, drove the rental car back to Dallas, stayed overnight in Amarillo, dropped the rental at the Hertz lot at DFW Airport, took their shuttle to the terminal I'd left my car at, and drove home. Over the next few months, I got several nasty phone calls from their HR and accounting departments demanding I pay them back for the trip, including paying for the $700 drop-off fee for the car. Never answered them, of course, just let them go to voicemail. Eventually, got a demand letter from their legal department, paid an attorney a nominal fee to send them a demand for compensation/threaten a lawsuit letter. Never heard from the firm again. Side note, the ticket was still valid. I ended up selling it to a friend at a big discount, and he was able to use it. And our last story. Mike finds a way to get rid of a problem employee. The revenge wasn't mine, but I figured I'd share as I was witness to the beginning. Certain names and details changed to protect the guilty. Background. Years back, I worked for a large bank in the UK. We all worked on the same floor and in the same department, but within different teams. I was just passing through on a secondment, and I saw the beginning of this revenge, but was filled in on the aftermath later. One of the teams was run by a woman called Sarah. Sarah was by many measures a good manager, but she had a blind spot. That blind spot was a woman called Helen. Now, when I was in my previous role, I interacted with Helen a fair bit, and she'd seemed friendly, but when it came to actually working with her, she was a nightmare. She'd tattle, steal ideas and credit, and generally throw you under the bus at any opportunity. I'm not sure why Sarah always protected her, but it soon became a sore point for most people on the floor who had to deal with her. Enter Mike, who was the manager of a smaller team. Mike could be a bit of a jerk, but was still professional and fun to work with. To give you an idea of his character, I found out I was being made redundant, and even though he wasn't my manager, he heard about it and booked time out to help me with my CV and do interview practice. Shortly after, it was announced that Mike's smaller team was being dissolved, and the staff either made redundant or moved to other teams. At the time of the cuts, the economy in the UK was in a bad state, and all the banks were looking for efficiencies. He was redeployed and took the vacant manager role under Sarah that Helen had been gunning for. To make matters worse, Helen now reported directly to him. Helen was furious and spent no time in making her discontent known, as she felt she was entitled to the promotion. Unfortunately for her, Mike was wise to her. They'd both joined the company around the same time, so he knew exactly what she was like. He'd even had her blame him for her mistakes before. Crap, even the project she'd gotten so much praise for had been work one of his staff had done. So he started the process of documenting her poor work and attitude to manage her out of the business. Sarah, however, would not allow it. Helen was a high performer in her eyes, and she wouldn't sign off on him getting rid of her. When I left the team, Mike was frustrated with her and wasn't sure what to do. The revenge. I met up with Mike a year later, and he shared how he'd solved the Helen problem with me because he knew all the issues I'd had with her. Because Sarah had his hands tied, his only other option to get Helen out of the team was for her to leave of her own accord. He couldn't oust her by making her life difficult, or she'd go to Sarah. So he went the other way. The mother effer sat through every performance meeting with her for the rest of the year, gritting his teeth and praising her. That then justified him giving her a really high performance rating. He also used his own contacts to find roles in other teams at his grade that he then talked up to Helen. These roles were specifically selected because they were specialized in one of the things Helen claimed she was an expert at, but had very little real experience in. Basically roles where he knew she'd have the highest chance of crapping the bed. Eventually, she applied for one, and he spent several weeks coaching her for the interview. In the company at the time, the interviews were scored off of three main factors: performance rating and current role, competency-based interview results, relevant experience. He'd done everything he could do to make her shine in all three. She took the promotion and within 2 months had quit the bank. He knew she wasn't ready for the responsibility, didn't have the skills, and her poor work ethic would be exposed. Worst case, she'd get her crap together and he'd still look like the perfect manager to Sarah. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.